Well, first, I just want to get a little introduction here with my business partner, and actually, there's a reason I picked this guy as my business partner because when I was going over to pet rescue, you always take the least rambunctious animal out there. He was the shyest, and he was the shyest one in the litter, and he wasn't like too flamboyant, and so he's real loyal. You got to remember that, you know. So if you're working with somebody in business, you got to make sure they're really loyal. Number one rule, and he's loyal. He's very loyal, so that's why I got him. That's why I, chose wisely. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about this QE deal, and I'm glad somebody gave me an article about that, but I forgot who the heck the article was by. But I read the article before, actually, and it was about apologizing for QE. Now, I don't know if this guy was sincere or not, because it's almost like a joke, It's like, everybody's kind of like backtracking, It's like they're covering their tracks. Why are you apologizing now? What the hell's the deal? Something going to blow up? It's almost like, they're coming out with the stuff with, they're talking about, possible inflation, with Greenspan, Allan Greenspan talking about inflation now. It's almost like, oh, yeah, it wasn't my fault. It's Bernanke's fault or something. Or people that are resigning. He saw this a couple of years ago. They're writing all these letters about Goldman Sachs and all this type of stuff. Publicly. I forgot what the hell that was. But, it's almost like they're trying to get the dirt away from them and separate them from what's going to come up. And that's what I think is going to, there is something coming up. Because, the problem with the shrewd and the shrewdest is they outsmart themselves. Now, first off, with QE, it's a bailout basically for the bankers, simply put. In other words, if they make a bad bet, they got some bad loans out there, they got some bad paper they're holding, the Federal Reserve buys it up. It's almost like you. Say you had, an investment house someplace, and you bought it in 2005 and it went and crashed in 2008 and 2009. Well, the Fed, if you were buddies with the Fed, and that's the word, buddies, you got to be inside the clique, right? They'll buy it up for you at face value. So you got no problem. Otherwise, you'd be like unloading it at a loss. Just like, if you had a bunch of stocks or something like that, and they lost or whatever, the Fed, if you're buddies with the Fed, they buy them up for you. Like, you're on the inside clique. Now, actually, when you're talking about the 1%, if you start splitting it out into the higher 1%, the smaller portion of the 1%. Maybe it's not the 1 basis point, but maybe it's the top 1/3 of the 1%. All those people pretty much are connected. That's the whole deal, And we all know that's the problem, right? And that was pretty funny on Twitter, because JP Morgan, the connected, the prodigies, the perfect people, put out ask us a question, and man, they got slammed. I thought that was pretty funny. I saw some of the remarks what's it like to work for drug dealers? Do they tip? Stuff like that, I was like, man, it was like the people that were hitting them with all these questions, it was some pretty original questions out there, And how do you foreclose? You use computers or a dartboard or whatever, I don't know, some kind of shit like that. But they slammed the hell out of them. 6 hours later, they closed down that Twitter site. So, it's almost like, the elite are an inside clique, and everybody else is the enemy, and everybody else is recognizing this. That's the problem. Now, when they're doing this QE stuff, right? Yeah, I know this guy apologized, and I'm kind of wondering. It's almost like Allan Greenspan saying, yeah, there's going to be inflation coming soon, or the guy that used to work for Goldman Sachs for a gazillion years, or JP Morgan for a gazillion years, and when they resign, you're like spilling the beans now because they know something's going to happen. That's what I'm thinking. It's like it's not sincere. They're just covering their tracks. I'm the good guy, that kind of shit, right? So, the only ones that make a lot of money in the United States, a real lot of money, are connected. And they're connected with usually it's a financial and banking sector, but they could be having sweet contracts with the government, Like I guess, if I knew Obama, I'd say, yeah, I'm gonna, make some paper, paper mache solar panels, and I need a $10 billion to start up or something. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on, right? And they're connected. They're connected. So, that's why everybody's pissed off, because they know what's going on. Now, the same deal with QE, though. The problem is, I'm getting back to this QE thing because there's a point I was going to make. Mark Farber, say, for instance, is he connected? No. Jimmy Rogers, is he connected? Now, this is a couple guys that got a lot of money, right? I don't think they really tell you everything when they give you interviews and all this kind of stuff. But are they connected to the governmental, system in the United States? No, they're not, right? Actually, they're major critics of Obama, right? So are they connected? No, not at all, right? But, they're betting, well, I don't know about Jimmy Rogers, but Mark Farber's pretty heavy into gold and stuff. He's figuring there's going to be a systemic crash. Now, the way I'm going to say there's going to be a systemic crash, because what they're doing every time they do this QE stuff, as they continue to do it, right? It's like they're enticing the banks to hold cash, right? And they're trying to, they don't want the dollars to get out into the system. Because what was going to happen, and then we really would have inflation. Like if all this QE money was actually if they put some of this QE money into the hardworking, productive middle class instead of the parasites on the top, right? And it would actually spur the economy really fast. But the problem is it's not doing anything for the economy. It's just hooking up the wealthy. But the problem is, these dollars are just hiding behind like a dam behind a wall of money. And they're going to come out all at once. See, this is the age-old game that always happens with central banks. I kind of put it in this other manner, but it's really like this is going to be the problem of the elite. And what are they going to invest in? What? Actually, the elite, the big guys on the top, I talked about some of the things before, and I guess I'll link up another video like I did before a while back. What the hell kind of stuff do they invest in? Actually, a lot of it's like artwork, jewelry, real estate, and all this type of stuff. But, I don't think it's going to be real estate that's going to be going up in value if they want to unload dollars. What are they going to buy? It's probably going to get more into precious metals. But they're going to need the precious metal bloggers out there and stuff like that to really, really pump it up when it goes into bubble mania, to unload it on the middle class later on. But eventually, a lot of the elite are probably going to start jumping into like a lot of hard assets and commodities, because really, when you start thinking about it, where the hell could you put your money? Is the stock market looking safe now? Yeah, there's some people that argue it can go up higher and higher and higher, but there's a lot of indications that say it's not. And when I keep looking at George Soros' bet, I respect the guy a great deal for financial information. If he's actually put a large bet that the S&P is going to go down, he placed his bet back in mid-August of 2013. It hasn't gone down yet, but there's a lot of indications. There's a lot of analysts that say it's going to possibly even correct 40 to 50%. So if you got this wall of cash that, because, you're one of the inside guys, and you got to remember, it's like, that's where a large amount of the percentage of the wealth of the country is. It's concentrated on the top, less than half of 1%. You're of the anointed, connected people. The Federal Reserve is hooking you up, right? They're buying anything you bought that was screwed up. If you bought, mortgage, you had these mortgage-backed securities, you had these properties, you had whatever, any kind of troubled paper you had on your balance sheet, they took at face value and they gave you cash, right? They gave you U.S. Treasuries. They are enticing you, trying to keep you holding that. And that is the whole game of holding down the precious metals, because actually, if the precious metals look like they're going to start going up, some of that cash is going to go into the precious metals, and that could actually even cause it to go up even further. Now, how are they being enticed? Because they're getting some kind of interest, they're getting some kind of return on the money, but maybe that's not going to be enough. And that's what's actually going to cause that wall of money to go out of there, because when the interest rates start rising, it's like game over completely, right? And that's where you might see the panic into the precious metals. And the ones that are actually going to be leading it, you're not going to see it as a panic, but the ones that are going to lead it first are going to be the elite. But I think they're shrewd enough to be out of it, and they're going to have other people pushing the bubble higher and higher and higher, and it basically get dumped on the middle class, or maybe like the lesser elite, if you want to call them that. You know, maybe the professionals and things like that, people with a couple $1 million and that type of stuff. They'll get it pushed on them, and it'll be left holding the bag at super, super, super high rates. But do beware that this game of QE, it's not causing inflation in the economy just yet, because the wall of money has not come out yet. It doesn't go into the economy. They're just buying back assets. It's good. So I've been saying this all along, though, but I guess that maybe I should, I've been saying it all along. But basically, it's an asset swap. It's, the Federal Reserve creates some cash. They buy up any troubled assets the elite have in their balance sheets, which is the biggest banks. Any troubled assets, anything they're losing out on. And they buy them up, and it shores up the balance sheets of these large financial institutions, and they hold cash in return. They hold treasuries in return. That's going to be the major problem. I don't know when this wall of money is going to start coming out, but the thing is, the more it builds up, the faster it can actually pour forth into the economy and cause rampant inflation. Then what do they do? Right? They're screwed. But you have to remember, it's almost like put yourself in the shoes of the elite. It's almost like, well, think more clearly now. Say, for instance, you have all these assets, and anything you bought in your lifetime, whether it's, it's almost like, say, let's keep it real simple. You got a pen here. I paid $1 for it. The Federal Reserve is going to give you $10 for it. So the problem is you got all these little things, right? And you're only allowed to hold the cash. But, in your mind, you're thinking about what's the next move. You're not going to hold the cash forever, right? You're going to go into something else, correct? I mean, it's the same problem even with the people with precious metals. If they go change their precious metals someday into cash, later down the line, they're going to wonder about, where do I go into next? But, if you're a bankster up there with a lot of cash, you'd probably be eyeing things like the precious metals, and they look pretty well depressed right now. And there's a lot of arguments for gold, right? Long term. So it makes you wonder. I think a lot of that money's going to start trickling forth into the precious metals. So, I just have to say this, it's just a little bit of a patient waiting game, but just remember that, they can't hold the dollars forever. Even though the game is rigged, they cannot hold those dollars forever. They cannot. They're going to have to, they're actually looking at targets where to place these dollars. And when they start coming out, there's going to be bubbles in other areas. And I think one of those targets is going to be in the precious metals. So just beware. And, I got to say something else about Bitcoins here on the end, because I don't know, I put this video out, not for me, and actually it's not to advise anybody about, Bitcoins. Actually, if you bought it a while ago, great. I'd be unloading that stuff now. It almost reminds me of what's going to happen with silver and gold. I don't know how high it's going to go, but if you got some crazy gains on something, you want to take the gains. And, no business holds all cash. Just like, I'm telling all these, about with QE, the Federal Reserve is trying to entice these banksters to hold all the cash. But they ain't going to hold all cash forever. They're not going to hold all cash forever. That money's going to come out someplace. And there's too much of it. So I don't know where the hell it's going to go. But I think part of it's going to go into the precious metals, because obviously it's suppressed. But, just remember, when anything goes up so much, don't be afraid to unload it. And that goes for Bitcoins, that goes for silver, that goes for gold, that goes for anything. And that doesn't mean you hold cash forever. I mean, I'm not saying that. Actually, if you look at any freaking business out there, are they mostly in cash? No. No. Nothing's like that. Nothing's like that. But, the real problem is with the social inequality in the United States. Actually, the problem is, it's quite obvious that the people on the top, not just, you want to call them the 1%, they're a fraction of 1%, maybe they're the 1 basis point, they're connected. They're connected in the banking and financial sectors and also with government contracts. That's the problem. That's the problem. And actually, the only way to get out of that problem, if the middle class fought back and were highly productive and did not use the banking sector would die off. You know what I'm saying? They would. Actually, you don't have, I'm not saying not use any type of credit, but when you're using local banks, you're using local credit unions, especially like credit unions, you're killing off the financial establishment in Wall Street. But a lot of people don't do that. And actually, what I've always seen is that a lot of times people have got some money and all of a sudden they got some money pretty quick and all of a sudden they feel like they're a big deal. They go to B of A or some big name like that because they feel like they're real important because they're gonna stick with the big name and they throw the big name out there. I bank with so-and-so, Well, I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's smart because actually they don't give a shit about you, to tell you the truth. That's the fact. That's a fact. But, some people are smarter than others and, they take the advice I give them and run with the ball, or otherwise they do whatever the hell they want. Because I do know a lot of times some of these Midwestern banks are way better. Some of these banks in Texas and things like that, and especially these credit unions. You could choke off the Wall Street financial establishment pretty easily. You could. But the problem is a lot of people go like they get attracted to the name and they feel like they got to be part of that power structure and they want to feel like a big deal. I've always rejected B of A and Chase, you know what I mean? I've always rejected. I thought it was funny, So that's just me, That's how I always thought of it. So anyway, just remember, QE is like a racket to just shore up the balance sheets of anybody who's connected in the banking and financial establishment. They're the 1%. Actually, they're the one fraction of 1%. They're the 1 basis point. They're anointed, and that's the whole problem, right? But I see a lot of cracks in the facade. And like I said, this wall of money's behind the dam. Once that dam starts breaking, it's going to come out and go someplace. And actually, it probably will go into silver and gold because they're too cheap right now, right? Silver and gold ain't in no bubble. There's no way, Now, the thing is, it's like the reason I see those cracks in the facade because they're talking about, this guy was talking about apologizing for QE. I don't think he gives it. I don't know. Maybe he does give a shit. I don't think he does. There's other people that resigned from Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan that wrote these things and stuff about their former employers that they probably worked for like 15, 20 years. And they said, oh, yeah, they're real evil because they think something's going to happen. They want to distance themselves from it. And it's like Allan Greenspan's talking and cautioning about inflation. Like the fucking guy didn't freaking cause it himself, too. So, you get my drift on this whole deal. But, anyway, use a lot of common sense, damn it. And if you got Bitcoin, I wish I'm going to get back on that in a second here, the Bitcoins. I do wish, well, I don't know, I didn't bother with the Bitcoins, but say I had Bitcoins, I paid $100 down on it, and they're worth like $100,000 now or some crap like that. You know what I'd be doing right now? I'd be unloading that stuff left and right. Guarantee. That's my only advice on that shit right now, okay? If you put a little bit of money down and you got a lot of money out of it now, or supposedly it looks like there's a lot of money in there, I'd be buying stuff with it, man. I mean, if Subway sandwiches takes it, buy yourself a year's worth of Subway sandwiches. I don't know. Put them in the freezer, right? I don't know, man. So do what the hell you want. People, and you think I'm arguing, some of these people with this Bitcoin crap think I'm arguing with them like I'm trying to tell you the truth, man. And, later on, the same kind of deal is going to happen with silver and gold. And it kind of tells me, this Bitcoin deal is kind of telling me that silver could actually hit some crazy prices just due to a mania. And that's what I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be panic and mania that's going to make silver go high. And it's going to probably go higher than I think it's ever going to go. It may go to 500 like nothing. 500 like nothing. It may, when it goes ballistic. That ain't going to happen right away. It might be a little mini bubble 2014, but it might take a few years, and that's it. That's it. A few years, and it's going up to like, Bitcoins is a pretty good lesson about mania and bubbles. Now, some people hate me saying that, but that's what's going on, man. So, if you want to hold them, do what the hell you want, man. So, hey, I don't have any. I know what I'd be doing. I'd be spending them things, man, left and right. And that's what I think is going to happen when silver goes to some crazy price. People say, oh, no, it's going to go to $10,000 an ounce. I'll be like, yeah. I mean, if you could take 100 ounces of silver and buy yourself, a half a house or almost a whole house or some shit with it, I think I'd be getting rid of this silver. But, that's what's going to happen later. People are saying, no, no, no. Anyway, just warning you, man. And watch out for the shrewd, man. But, the problem is with the shrewd, they outsmart themselves. So, like, the banksters got this big QE money, wall of QE money accumulating behind a dam. What's the next step? What's the next step? What do you do with the money? Do you feel safe in the dollar forever? They don't. I know it. Once that money comes out, it's going to go someplace, and that someplace is going to be the next bubble. That someplace may be silver and gold.